Hi everybody, and welcome to another lesson of our Python course. In this lesson we are going to look at a sort of a case study in which I'm going to write a piece of code and explain the code as I go along. So far we've seen a few parts of Python programming. We've seen built-in functions, we've seen strings, we've seen variables in the last lesson. We've also seen comments, which are part of your code that don't get executed when you run the program. And now the main point of this case study now is to sort of illustrate to you that what we are doing as programmers when we write code is really that we take these different parts like variables and strings and these different parts that our programming language offers to us and put them together in such a fashion that they together do something when we execute the program. So on the fundamental level, that's what the business that we programmers are in, of combining and putting things together so they may do something. Now obviously, because we've only seen a small part of Python, not that small, but there's more to come, what we are going to write in this lesson is going to be a relatively basic program. And what I came up with as an example program is we are just going to write a piece of code that counts the number of certain characters in a very big string. So as you hopefully probably recall, you create a string by using quotation marks, and the strings we've seen were usually rather sort of well ordered. It was something that makes sense, like hello world or London or a name. Now, but because a string is just a sequence of characters, it can be also a very chaotic string. So I'm going to create a very long, very chaotic string. Here we go, that's our chaos string. And the piece of code we're going to write is just going to give us a sort of report, in a way, of how often which characters or certain characters occur in that chaos string of ours. Now, I think I've highlighted, pointed out to you that one role of comments in programming is to explain to yourself as well as to your fellow programmers what each piece of code is doing that you're writing. So in this example, it would be we start the comment with a hashtag and then we write code to count, and I'm making this up as I go along, of occurrences of certain characters in a chaos string. Chaos string is not actually a thing, you know, I just keep calling it a chaos string for no really reason. Now, so this is a piece of code, and that would be sort of a real example, like a piece of code that starts to explain what you're about to do. Now, from the last lesson, we saw that we can assign things to variables, including strings, and the way we do that would be with this sort of variable equal sign and then what we want to assign notation. So let's say we want to assign this to a variable, and how would we call this variable? This is, by the way, also a real part of programming, that you have to decide how you call things. So I don't know, let's say I call this random str and follow with an equal sign. Going to make a little bit of space here. So now here we have it, the notation we saw in the last time. We just make up a variable name, follow with equal sign, and assign the string to it. And we've done this so that we can just use this variable throughout the rest of our program in the places where we need it, rather than this copy pasting this huge chaos string here. Okay, now we've got our random string variable, and I've used the Python convention of doing underscore letters and using a lower score letter, and an underscore in between the words that make up the variable. Now, if we want to check out the length of a certain string, maybe you remember the built-in function len, which, you know, just counts the number of characters. So we can use that to give us the overall length, so that we may know, can say, okay, this character occurs so and so many times out of so many total characters. So if we write this here, this would hopefully give us the length of this chaos string or random string. And so we print that out to see the outcome. There you go, and 75 is apparently the character count of our random string. Now, because we want this program to sort of be coherent in some way, maybe we want to write something like this and write string So now, every time we run the program, we get in the output something that's a little bit more coherent in the sense that it, conveys something. It's heading towards doing an actually coherent job on something. Now, and you start to see maybe how we're using different parts here. Like we're using comments to give us to describe what we're doing. We are using strings here and here. We're using the built-in functions of print and len, and we are assigning to this random variable here, random string variable, using the normal notation. So we are already using a good bit of the things we've seen, and this is already doing a small program that does something, right? It takes some weird thing and counts its characters and gives you a tiny report on it. Now, sort of elaborating on that, let's say we want to know how often the lowercase a occurs in our huge string. And maybe you remember we saw the string function of count, and the string function you create like we saw it, with the string followed by a dot followed by the string function name, which, if you want to count a certain character, will be the string function count, followed by parentheses, and then within there you have to tell the count function what you want to count in that string, so lowercase a if you want to do that. So this will be a legit piece of code. Now obviously we want to see how often the a occurs in our big string. So what we can do is we can just call this count function on our random string variable, and this should tell us how often the a occurs. And obviously we have to print it out if we actually want to see the outcome. I think I've mentioned this before. If you don't print it and run the program, the computation will still happen. Like this piece of code will run, but the outcome of it just won't be presented to you. So if you want to see it, you have to put that in a print statement. Here we go. Apparently there are 10 lowercase a's in our original large string. Now again, in the same spirit of this aiming to be a little coherent program, we can write maybe something like lowercase a occurs this many times in our string. And now, each time we run this program, it will tell us. So 75 is the overall amount, lowercase a 10 times. And now, let's say we want to check for different characters. Now one way of doing it is we could just do the same piece of code, copy paste it, and let's say we want to check for, let's do it twice. Let's say we want to check for uppercase Z, right? So we change this, what we pass to count, because count is now supposed to count uppercase Zs, and this here. So now if you run the program, here you go, there are no lowercase z's. Sorry, this would be uppercase. Right. So obviously, eventually you want to write programs that actually do something that you want to do, right? I mean, in this case, why do you want to write this program in the first place? Just checking which characters occur how often in a chaos string. That doesn't seem to be useful in any particular way. But the point here is just to illustrate to you that what we do is taking the bits of Python that we've learned so far and combining them in a piece of code in such a way that something is being accomplished when we run that piece of code. And eventually, if we learn a little more Python and a few more things, you will be able to do the same thing for something that will actually be useful in a way when you run that program. I don't think we can't do that yet because there's a little more that we need to learn to have the tools here. The tools necessary, really. Alright, so maybe just for fun, elaborating a little bit, maybe so we're checking for lowercase a and uppercase z, maybe something else in the middle of the alphabet. I don't know, what's in the middle of the alphabet? Like M maybe. So you can see just by copy pasting you can make that program a little longer. So there are actually 9 lowercase m's in this, as you can see here when we print out our little report. It also shows you that the program is executed by pretty much from top to bottom. So every time you hit this run button or execute your program in any other way, Python starts at the top and goes from line 1, line 2, line 3 and so forth, each single time doing the instruction that you've created on that line. So it ignores 1 line and 2 because they're comments, then it assigns the string, then it prints this out, then it prints the len here, that generates the len first, the length of the random string, and prints that out, and so forth and so forth. So when you read the program, you follow the logic going from top to bottom. Obviously there are ways to improve this program. Maybe just for fun I'm going to show you a few more. Maybe one thing you could do is, you see we're passing in a string here to this count function, telling it what character it should count in our big chaos string. So one thing we could do is we could put that into a variable as well. So maybe call that character to count. We do this, assign a lowercase a to this variable, and now instead of writing the lowercase a there, we write the variable. I called it char to count as in the character that we want to count. So you see, like the first thing we do is we assign a lowercase a to this variable, and now in there, where we are supposed to tell count what it's supposed to count, we pass in this variable that has the lowercase a assigned to it, rather than the lowercase a itself directly. And so the question is, why do you want to do this? One reason is that in this way you can write the program in such a way that it's easier to read, in terms of the logic is maybe easier to follow. So if you read this, you can here char to count sort of explains implicitly that's the character that we want to count, right? So that makes sense because that's what we pass into the count function here. Also another benefit would be you could just swap that up pretty easily, and it's pretty explanatory where you would want to change what you want to count because it's one variable assignment. The same thing here with the random string variable. Like let's say we had copy pasted this large string in every place where we have random string, like here, here, and here. If we want to change that, we have to change it in every single place. But if it's in one variable and we use the variable from then on, we can just change this up in this one single place, create another chaos string, and we don't need to do anything else because this variable assignment happens on top, and then all the things that are held by this variable are changed automatically. So that's the other main benefit of having variables. Now what we did here we can also do in the other blocks. So char to count, equals, here we have an m, we do the same thing. Let me copy paste this and make that capital Z, and here. So the same logic, rather than passing in what we want to count directly in the count method here, count function, we create a variable beforehand, assign what we want to count to that variable, and pass in that variable into the string function. Now, one thing that may seem questionable to you is that we use the same variable name here for the lowercase a, there for the lowercase m, there for the uppercase z. But that can be done in Python, and in the last tutorial I pointed that out, because what you assign to a variable can change over the course of your program. So here you assign the lowercase a, which means lowercase a will be in the char to count variable for this part of the program, and then we override what's in that char to count variable with a lowercase m, and then the lowercase m will be in there, and then we override again what's in the char to count variable, in this case the uppercase z, and then uppercase z will be in there. So this, what is in this variable, can change over the lifetime, over the cycle of the program, so to speak. Okay, I think that should hopefully give you a little bit of an impression of how we are as programmers. Our job is to combine the tools that are available to us through our language, programming language, in such a fashion as to actually do something with it, create a logic that when executed does a job, so to speak. That was really the point of this case study, to make that clear to you. Obviously this is a program that's not by itself that useful. I mean, it's a little toy program that does something, but you won't use it for anything real. But you see, in a way, it's not that far removed from things that can be useful. You know, maybe you can envision a piece of code that lets you count different words, how often certain words occur in a book. Let's say maybe you are interested to analyze the word composition of, I don't know, all Lord of the Rings books. And obviously you would need to get the book from somewhere, and you want to count words rather than letters, rather than characters, and so forth. But you can see how this, as a general shape for a program, can be actually something that may be useful in some context. So it's not useful by itself yet, but it's not that far removed from programs that can very well be written for a certain actually useful purpose. Right. This case study is a little bit of an experiment, so I'm going to ask a few people whether you guys actually find it useful. I hope it is, and in the next lesson we are going to look at something, I believe that's my plan so far, something called modules, which is an important link between the parts of Python that we've seen and actually doing something real that's useful maybe in your job or maybe some other context. And also something that, in my opinion, is sometimes neglected by online courses. These modules that we're going to see are a little bit of the bridge between the parts of a language that are fundamental and actually doing things that are sort of real world in a way, so to speak. Alright, I think that should be it for now, and see you in the next lesson. Bye bye.